Just when you thought that the drama was over in the Cardano ecosystem, we've got Charles Hoskinson challenging the Cardano Foundation. And as a part of today's video, I want to break down everything that he's basically mentioned and what the Cardano Foundation has responded with. What's up, Ada Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here, Feud. As a part of today's video, diving into the Cardano ecosystem, talking about governance, talking about IOG, Charles Hoskinson, and the Cardano Foundation, which have been sort of going toe-to-toe, head-to-head here in the last couple of days, if not weeks. Now, as always, if you guys enjoy content like this, please make sure to smash that thumbs up on the way in. If it's your first time stopping by the channel and you want more, consider subscribing to the channel. And last but not least, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please go ahead and leave those down below. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about what has been going on here in the ecosystem. If you've missed it, if it's just your first time diving into this, right? Governance has officially kicked off here. We are in the Voltaire era. We've got the Cardano Constitution being ratified about a week and a half ago, taking place in Argentina. And we're now working collectively as a community to put together the annual budget for Cardano, which basically highlights or dictates how the chain will develop and who's going to be in charge of actually building and bringing the chain to the masses. So as a little bit of background here, if you've missed it, we've got Charles Hoskinson, who basically had put out this tweet asking the community, about where and how he could potentially spend $1 million in order to showcase some of the biggest and best builders here within the Cardano ecosystem. And the majority of the community highlighted the Rare Evo event taking place annually in Las Vegas. Now, someone asked as a quick follow-up, why not use the Cardano Summit as an opportunity to showcase all the builders? And Charles basically mentioned that he won't be attending the Cardano Summit as long as the Cardano Foundation will be hosting it. And so again, he's been very critical about the Cardano Foundation and the fact that they have a group of board members appointed out of Switzerland who aren't necessarily elected by the Cardano community. Now, that's because of some of the bylaws in place, which of course the Cardano Foundation has to abide by, given the fact that they are residing within Switzerland. Now, Charles has been vocal about the fact that he would like to see them move out of there and therefore actually take over sort of as a member-based organization where they would have the ability to bring board members on as long as the community had some sort of input or some sort of voting process associated with it. Now, as a quick follow-up here, there was a member who mentioned the fact that, this is an opportunity for Charles to make amends. And he basically said this, right? If they're going to be voting against the budget, and if they're also not going to be supporting the Cardano community's constitutional vote, that he doesn't want anything to basically have to do with the CF. Now, again, I'm just sort of laying the foundation here. Quickly following that, we have Nicholas Cerny, the Gov lead, mentioning the fact that the foundation will be following suit with the community and actually endorsing the delegate vote, right, which was to ratify the Constitution. Charles then snapped right back and basically asked about the budget there as well. And again, Nicholas Cerny confirmed that the Cardano Foundation is willing to follow suit, right, as long as the budget meets their requirements and that it is reasonably sized and that there are sufficient safeguards in place to actually make sure that the delivery of what is proposed through the budget can and will actually happen. And so in closing, this was 2 days ago, Charles basically wrapped everything up and said, good, I'm glad that we've got something done and that it's unfortunate that a lot of this drama has spilled over into X, but that's basically just where we're at. And that he's looking forward to a new era in terms of governance for 2025 and that he wishes the Cardano Foundation well. So that's, again, a little bit of the background there. And I personally thought that the beef was squashed and that everything was done. Now, people are basically also expecting for the Cardano Foundation to come out and make a particular statement or a specific statement about their role with respect to Project Catalyst funding round number 13. So if you've missed it, the funding round 13 results are officially out. I believe it's over 199 projects which have now been funded through that particular round. And I believe there's over 50 million ADA, which was distributed for that. So congrats first and foremost to all the builders, all the hard workers and contributors here in the ecosystem that have been able to get that funding through Project Catalyst. Now, we have the Cardano Foundation here following up with a pretty nice statement here, reacting, right, to the community's reaction or perception of their 180 million ADA that was used in funding round number 13. Now, I'm just going to read a couple of brief pieces here. This was actually written and released by the CEO of the foundation, which many of you probably already know, which is Frederick Regard. But he mentioned the fact that the Cardano Foundation has actively played a role and engaged in Project Catalyst, right? Since 2021, participating in the following rounds: funding round number 4, number 7, number 8, number 9, and number 12. Now, he also states that we initially, and when I say we, I'm referring to the Cardano Foundation, initially considered and preferred an earlier announcement date as it pertains to funding round number 13. So taking a break here, people were really frustrated with the fact that the foundation waited until 2 days before voting actually closed to release the fact that they would be voting with such a big amount and who they would actually be in support of. So again, this is mentioning that the foundation didn't want to overshadow what was going on with the Constitutional Convention in Argentina, which also played a more significant and pivotal role, right? And so they basically recognized that and they said, hey, we don't want to overshadow what's going on in Argentina, so we're going to wait a little bit and release our Catalyst involvement at a later time. Now, that said, it also mentions the fact that even though they were a pretty big portion of the control, right, of who got funding for Project Catalyst in round number 13, that there was only 4.8 billion ADA registered to vote in Project Catalyst round 13 out of the total 35 billion, which is currently in circulation. Again, as a quick aside, if you're not aware, Cardano has a hard cap of 45 billion tokens and roughly 35 are in circulation. And so that said, the foundation's stake represented about 3.75% of the registered stake for that particular voting round and only 0.5% of the total circulating supply of ADA. Now, keep in mind that out of the 35 billion, not everyone or not all of that ADA is actually registered to vote for Project Catalyst. And even among some of those that were participating, not everyone actually voted on every proposal across every category, given the fact that there's just too many proposals that have to be vetted in order for the average ADA holder to be able to make an informed decision on X, Y, and Z proposal. So I think the biggest takeaway for me here is that we need more participation. We need more engagement. Again, the fact that only 3.75% of the total circulating ADA is actually being used in Catalyst means that there's a lot of people or a lot of ADA holders that aren't necessarily participating. Now, this also raises the questions, what about big players like centralized exchanges? Binance, Coinbase, KuCoin, Mexi, they all hold ADA as well, but they're not using that for governance and they're not using that for Project Catalyst. So if they were to get involved, we'd really have some big whales that are able to sort of shift the waters here when it comes to who gets granted proposals or who gets granted awards for Project Catalyst proposals and who doesn't. And so as we close things out here for the Cardano Foundation's response, it states that going forward, we as the Cardano Foundation commit to providing improved clarity and predictability regarding our voting in Project Catalyst, including how much ADA we'll be voting for and in which criteria. Now, when making these decisions, next round will also take into consideration the various viewpoints expressed from across the ecosystem. So again, it's really good that they're at least able to put this out there. They probably should have put this out before, right? Actually releasing who and how much to be voting for, but it's better late than never. So jumping back over to their X account here, they have posted yesterday another statement bringing forth transparency, clarity, and dialogue, which is important to obviously them and us here as a community. So it states that over the past year, we've put considerable efforts into improving their communications, with the latest improvements being the launch of their financial insights reports, which I've actually broken down here. And a lot of that is on chain. So they're definitely trying to step up their transparency here. And we have to give them kudos and credit for that. Now, this is the interesting piece here. They'll now be bringing forward a launch of a new series featuring members of the Cardano Foundation leadership and various subject matter experts or SMEs. And this will be a regular forum open for discussion about their activities, where they'll be answering questions and sharing more context about what's actually needed in order to move the conversation forward with the community. So the very first space is scheduled for today, Wednesday, December 18th at 1900 UTC with Frederick Regard. There's also going to be, I believe, this is Giorgio Zanetti, the Chief Technical Officer. And then we also have Alex, who's, the sustainability lead from the Cardano Foundation, who will also be joining that particular space. So make sure to go ahead and check this out here. It'll be taking place here in just a couple of minutes. But if you're watching this after the fact, there should be a recording that is up for at least 30 days. So make sure to tune on in here. Now, there's also another piece here that was held yesterday by the foundation, which was the Cardano Roundtable series, right? Which is hosted by the CF, where they bring on subject matter experts and projects from the ecosystem to discuss exactly what's going on. So they are basically exploring large stakeholders and their influence, right? When it comes to DeFi and the Cardano Catalyst series. And so one quick piece here that I want to highlight, which I thought was really interesting, was the use of funds, which, for example, platforms like MinSwap as well as Optum Finance have done. And so again, if you're not aware, if you go ahead and you provide your ADA as liquidity on a platform like MinSwap, what they actually do is use some of that ADA or the majority of that ADA, and they vote for Project Catalyst. Now, if you hold the Min token, you're able to go ahead and actually vote as to which proposals you want to see shortlisted for the bulk of that ADA to be used for voting in. And very similarly, Optum Finance also actually allows for people to sort of leverage their platform to borrow ADA, which they can then use subsequently to vote in Project Catalyst. And so this raises an interesting topic where Michele from Harmonic Labs was really vocal about this, but he mentioned a really good point, which is when I'm providing liquidity to something like MinSwap, or when I'm providing my ADA to a DeFi platform like Liquid or Optum Finance, should I, as an ADA holder, right, be prompted to confirm whether or not I want that ADA to be used in voting for Project Catalyst? Because again, a lot of people may not realize, but their ADA is being used to vote for some of these Catalyst proposals. And if they're not involved or actively participating, it's almost like someone is using their ADA, right, for their own personal gain or for their own personal decision making. So let me know what you guys think down below. But that was a really interesting piece that I sort of took away from that conversation. Again, make sure to check this out. It's about an hour and 18 minutes long, but really, really good. So that now brings us to the recent debate about the foundation and where they should actually be founded out of. So again, following the message from the foundation about wanting to be more transparent, wanting to provide more clarity, and just wanting to have more of a dialogue or conversation about the recent findings and their role when it comes to their vision for Cardano, Charles has mentioned, here's a question before they will lie about how the current board got appointed. And he states, if Switzerland does not allow for you to democratically elect the board members, then why can't you move the foundation to a new jurisdiction that actually will? Now, the assets can also be granted, and I'm assuming when he's talking about the assets, that he's talking about the ADA to another body. And he also states, also asked them about what happened to Tam, Nico, and Manmeet, and also asked them about the ESA administrator and exactly what has happened with that. In closing, Charles mentions bonus points if we ask them if they told Pragma members to not participate in Intersect. So Charles, again, really sort of going straight to the jugular here when it comes to the Cardano Foundation. And we have a member here from the community who's basically responded. So this is coming in here from Utah Cardano. Thank you for such a wonderful breakdown. I can't break all of this down here because as you guys can see, I mean, this is quite a lengthy conversation between Charles and Utah, but I'll leave the link to it down below. Now, in a nutshell, Utah responds to Charles and mentions that this is a part of the CF's bylaws. Now, the foundation is in Switzerland, and so they have to follow these bylaws. And if the CF does not follow them, then we as a community, right, can tell that supervisory body that they have to enforce and that they have to follow the bylaws. Now, this is the advantage of the foundation being in Switzerland. And what Charles is mentioning is sort of a member-based organization approach, which Intersect actually has taken. Now, Utah mentions that, as Charles knows, with the MBO approach, that this doesn't actually fix everything, right? That this actually requires a fair election method, and it also needs the implementation of Sybil attack protection. And so it all boils down to the following. Number one, do you trust the people elected, right, by the MBO to actually do what they are supposed to do? Do you also trust the election mechanism itself? And is there enough Sybil attack protection in place? That's if we go with what Charles is mentioning, which is to move the foundation to somewhere outside of Switzerland. Number two, do you trust the compelling bylaws if the foundation stays in Switzerland and the mechanisms to actually enforce the immutability and enforcement of those bylaws. And so again, there's a breakdown here of some of the positives and negatives. Thanks again, and shout out to Utah for that. And so in closing here, right, what I want to quickly highlight is with respect to Project Catalyst funding round number 13, we have 173 out of the 175 picks from the foundation, which have actually been funded. So as you guys can see here, they've had a pretty big heavy hand in deciding who can actually get funded and who can't. But again, they're only 0.5% of the total circulating supply and roughly 3.75% of the registered stake for that latest round of Project Catalyst funding. And so here we've also got an additional post, which I think highlights a really interesting piece here, which mentions the fact that the top 5 DREPs within Cardano right now have over 30% of the vote when it comes to governance. And so again, Utah, a pretty big voice here with over 268 million ADA delegated to them, 74% of those being whale delegators. We've got Jazz with 110 million ADA, the Eternal DREP community with 123 million ADA. And then as you guys can see, we've got the last 2 DREPs here with 73 million ADA and then 98 million ADA. So, I mean, when we're talking about decentralization, this alone, I think, is a little bit of a scary view here because it shows that 5 DREPs control almost 30% or more than 30% of the vote if they were able to sort of come together and say yes or no to future potential governance actions. So as we get ready to close out here, the last thing I want to highlight is that we have the team from Catalyst, which has also mentioned that they've heard the community, right? That they understand that they need to do something different and that they're now also diving into quadratic voting and other advanced methods to tackle the skewed impact of certain voters in shaping consensus or the outcome in things, for example, like the latest funding round. So that said, we have Chris Baird, who's the project manager for Project Catalyst, talking about some of the centralization concerns, right? With the 180 million ADA being used from the foundation. We've got some governance gaps, which he highlights. And then we have the community's reaction, which he also talks about. Now, one thing that he also does in this particular video, I'll leave the link to it down below, is he takes a look at what the outcome would have been had the foundation not been involved versus them having been involved. And so again, this is important for us as a community to better understand, to again, see how do things work out when the founding entities are involved versus how do things work out when they're not involved. Obviously, a lot of people are excited that they've gotten funding, but you could also imagine that people are frustrated, especially the ones that did not get handpicked or shortlisted by the foundation. So that'll do it here for today's video. Again, a lot of drama, but I'll be tuning into that Twitter space later on today from the foundation to hear about some of, the concerns that the community has raised and exactly what they plan on doing moving forward. So as I get ready to close out here, I'll be hosting Robert Ledwig, who's put together the SIP here for the 3-factor governance voting system for Cardano. I'll be breaking this down with him, but I'll let him sort of speak on this. But this is just another proposal from the community, which has come about because of the recent drama, the recent debates about governance, the Constitution, and the founding entities participating heavily within community activities. So that'll do it here for today's update. Again, just quickly recapping the recent drama and just the conversations between Charles Hoskinson, the foundation, where they're founded out of, whether or not they should be participating in, Catalyst, their thoughts and opinions on the Cardano budget, as well as their participation with the recent Cardano Constitutional Convention. That'll do it here for today's video. Let me know what you think down below. Is Charles too aggressive? Is he not, pushing hard enough? Is the foundation doing what they're supposed to be doing? Should they be founded out of Switzerland? Should they be founded elsewhere? Let me know what you think down below, because again, I feel like this is a conversation that's going to take a lot of time to figure out. And there's not going to be one yes or no solution. So that'll do it here for today's video. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. If you've made it this far, I'd appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. If it's your first time stopping by the channel and you want more content just like this, breaking down everything going on in Cardano, consider subscribing. And last but not least, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave those down below. That said, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.